Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, senior reporter at Gizmodo Media, Anna Merlan, on the Republic of Lies, American conspiracy theorists, and their surprising rise to power. Also on the program today, Trump claims ICE planning to round up millions of undocumented immigrants. Meanwhile, U.S. to send at least 1,000 more troops to the Middle East for defensive purposes. Meanwhile, our acting Secretary of Defense is being investigated by the FBI for corporate corruption. SCOTUS declines to change double jeopardy laws. And speaking of Paul Manafort, the DOJ just craned him out of Rikers. Were it that all Rikers inmates were so lucky. Chalk one up, or I should say chalk two up, for Governor Nixon. Driver's licenses for undocumented and New Yorkers is for reals, and the New York Green Deal is on the brink of happening. Nevada sues opioid corporate conspirators, and emails prove that the Republican operative Hofeller talked with Commerce Department officials in Censusgate. And the number of federal workplace safety inspectors has dropped like a lead balloon or a lead anvil on your foot. And Justice Democrats behind a serious challenge to New York Congressman Eliot Engel. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. We will dig into that over the coming days and weeks. The challenge to Eliot Engel. This is
very excited about that.
I mean, would not only be an upgrade, a major upgrade in terms of getting a genuine progressive in that seat, but it is very much one of those races that ends up creating a narrative or extending a narrative. If Justice Democrats, if the progressive wing of the Democratic Party can oust another established, very powerful Democrat, one who has been, in many respects, fairly regressive, this is going to have far greater implications than just this race. And certainly, I would imagine, both sides understand this. So there's going to be a lot of resources that go into that race. Far outsized resources than one would expect on that. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. It is mid-June. We've got graduations happening. I will not be here on Friday. I have an interview for you, though, on Thursday. because I will not be here because my daughter is graduating middle school. If you can believe it, if you've been listening to this show since its inception, she and the show are almost the same age. And not this iteration of the show, but just sort of, I guess, my radio career, just to give you a heads up. Also, a reminder, you can support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. All right, let's get to this sound. We are sending 1,000 troops, ostensibly to protect U.S. interests, which, of course, is an incredibly broad term. We mentioned this yesterday in our discussion in the wake of Tom Cotton calling for a military strike on Iran. Having defined just about everything in the world as a U.S. national security interest. And we have now been told that the Trump administration will be sending another 1,000 troops. The Pentagon will be, via the acting Secretary of Defense, who is not quite the Secretary of Defense because his hearing has been put off because of an FBI investigation into possible corruption he's had with some corporate defense suppliers. Just to, put a cherry on top of this story. Supposedly, Donald Trump has told, said today that the attack on the tankers near the Strait of Hormuz was minor because he's now trying to downplay it. There is a fascinating battle that is going on in the Trump administration between the people that Donald Trump appointed to... This is the political appointees, right? I feel like there has been a precedent within American history, certainly, of career and military officials being more belligerent, perhaps, than the political appointees and politicians. There's certainly a narrative about this with JFK regarding the Soviet Union. Histories differ, but this is a situation where Trump's own appointees seem to be trying to push for war. They are trying to push for war with Iran by putting us in such close proximity to basically nurture a mistake that leads everybody to war, or over-aggressive responses by either side that leads us to war. And then you have people like Tom Cotton who are literally out there beating a drum for war. And then you have other people. I don't know how to really, where is Trish Regan in this? Someone is trying to talk to Donald Trump through Trish Regan, which leads me to believe that maybe it's Murdoch, whoever it is, knows that Trump watches Trish Regan on Fox Business. And here she is. She's going to talk slowly, and she's going to talk rather insanely, but with a potentially good result, which is she is going to try and convince Donald Trump not to go to war because the Democrats want him to. Here it is.
There may actually be a whole lot of Americans whispering to the Iranians right now that they just need Trump out of the White House. And then the Democrats can reinstate that deal. Well, waiting for a new White House is just kind of dumb, on Iran's part anyway, because number one, despite recent polling, I suspect Trump just might get reelected. Number two, even if he doesn't get reelected, if the Iranians sit down at the table with the president now and negotiate something new, the Democrats aren't going to tear it up. Of course, that reelection thing is predicated upon a strong economy and peace. In other words, Americans like that strong economy and peace, meaning no World War III or no prolonged military conflict with Iran. But again, there are, remember, politically motivated, self-interested people everywhere, including in America. And there are people in America that would like nothing more than to see us engaged in a war with Iran, because they know war could very well spell the end of Trump 2020.
Oh, no.
I love
Great upshot.
where this message lands. I would have done a slightly different delivery, one that
but
didn't
you
pretend
don't
like
speak
I did.
Trump.
But I don't speak Trump. But this is fascinating. I just don't know that there is a precedent. There may be some there may have been Lippmann maybe, would write things that maybe the president would read, and it would give a sense of where certain people.
Trish Regan is Donald Trump's Walter Lippmann.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of but also
There's
the
a
fact
Democratic
that,
drift.
John Bolton came from Fox. It's not like these people are not seeing each other at the commissary, as it were. It's very strange, but I would say to Trump, listen to Trish Regan. We should all have a Trish Regan in our lives who are telling us that Mike Pompeo and John Bolton are not to be trusted.
You know what? I'll take it.
Definitely, if it works. Trish, I don't want to break your heart. Hey, folks, do you love the thrill of an escape room? Looking for clues, solving puzzles? Introducing Hunt a Killer. It's a monthly subscription game where you become a detective immersed in a murder mystery. This is nuts. It's crazy. It's great. Each month you'll receive crime scene photos, evidence, motive, and suspect information that you'll need to use to solve a crime. It's so interactive and convincing that it looks and feels real. You'll be racking your brain to solve the mystery and anxiously awaiting the next box of clues. It's perfect to play solo during date night or with friends or for a game night so you can swap theories. Folks, all the data shows the best way to expend your cash is on experiences. This is something you anticipate the box coming. You work it out, starting to slowly integrate Mila into this a little bit just to get her involved in something that actually makes her think. She's already like a big Law and Order fan now. It's very strange. Wow. Yeah. You got to take what you look. You got to take it where you got to go with the flow with teenage kids.
I just have to say. I don't. Law and Order is incredibly popular across every single demographic imaginable.
Well,
what I'm saying. It's wow.
The point is, anticipating the clues is almost as much fun as getting the clues, the actual getting of it. So this, the enjoyment lasts. It carries. I'm telling you, this has sold me on the whole notion of experiential things versus just material. Getting, I don't know, a new whatever. Yeah, Millennial Sam.
About experience.
Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so hurry to take advantage of this offer. That's huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. huntakiller.com/majority. And now, with that said, Saul is getting a new present. Because it's very difficult. Saul uses those spin brushes, and they're not terribly effective. But he wanted to have an electric toothbrush like Daddy has. And now he can. Quip. It's one of the first electric toothbrushes accepted by the American Dental Association. Quip can help pave the way to a healthier mouth and mind in just 2 minutes twice a day. Now, as you know, I have given Quip as a present to multiple people in my lives. My sister, completely unsolicited, texted me, I don't know, a couple of months ago, just got back from the dentist. The dentist is extremely pleased with me. So thank you. With Quip, brush heads are delivered on a dentist-recommended schedule of every 3 months for just $5. Quip provides a friendly reminder to stay committed to your oral health. I've told you guys this a million times. The whole key to an electric toothbrush is to use it. And Quip, because of the way it's designed, because it's portable, because it's doesn't need to be recharged, except for every 3 months, essentially. Easy to do. And now the whole family can get refreshed with Quip thanks to the new Kids Quip, which has the same 2-minute timer and guiding pulses as their original version. There are no childish gimmicks, just kid-friendly features like a small brush head, watermelon anti-cavity toothpaste, and rubber grip handles in colors little ones will love. I am so psyched about this. Because Saul has always wanted a toothbrush like mine, but the head is just too big for a kid that size. Now, boom. For all these reasons and more, that's why I love Quip. And with over 1 million happy, healthy mouths, do as well. Quip starts at just $25. And if you go to getquip.com/majority right now, you can get your first refill pack for free. That's your first refill pack for free at getquip.com/majority. Also, lastly, now the weather is warmer, it might be time to switch up your sheets and duvets to something a little breezier. From Brooklinen's newest linen collection, these beautiful, airy linen pieces that give you and your bedroom a sort of a chic, relaxed feel while providing you with the ultimate comfort. And they're available in 12 beautiful patterns and colors. Brooklinen have been my sheets of choice now for like 3 years. I have multiple sets because of my strange living situation in the wake of... We nest. So I've got Brooklinen sheets at 2 different locations. Almost the only thing that me and the ex could agree on were Brooklinen sheets. Now, of course, I like the crisper classic. I think it's called percale cotton. She likes the more sort of like luxurious version. But with that said, we both agree on Brooklinen. It's in their name, so you know Brooklinen's newest linen collection is amazing. Like I said, I couldn't recommend their products more. Great for graduates, newlyweds, friends, family. Treat yourself to the bedroom upgrade you deserve. And now Brooklinen.com is giving my listeners an exclusive offer. Get 10% off and free shipping when you use promo code MAJORITY at Brooklinen.com. Brooklinen's so confident in their product, all their sheets, comforters, and towels come with a lifetime warranty. The only way to get 10% off and free shipping is to use promo code MAJORITY at Brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com, promo code MAJORITY. Brooklinen, these are the best sheets ever. All right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Anna Merlan about the Republic of Lies. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. Pleasure to welcome to the program senior reporter at GOMO Media, that's formerly Gizmodo, Anna Merlan, author of Republic of Lies, American Conspiracy Theorists and Their Surprising Rise to Power. Welcome to the program, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
So rise to power, you don't say.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I mean, I suppose we could start with the president, who was one of the chief purveyors, it seems to me, of the birther conspiracy about Barack Obama. But
right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think people are probably familiar with his trajectory. But let's talk about. I mean, and I want to cover. I mean, obviously, we've talked on this program about Pizzagate, about Seth Rich, and certainly in terms of what you call Russiagate. But let's start with just the overall perspective on conspiracies. I mean, this isn't the conspiracy theories. I mean, the existence of conspiracy theories, you write, is nothing new. What makes it different now?
So I think pointing out that Donald Trump's sort of rise to actual political prominence started with birtherism is important, because we saw the ways that he realized that using conspiracy theories was a way to create a base to appeal to the right wing. It was a way for him to create some measure of attention for himself. So what we've seen over the last few years is this resurgence of the idea that promoting conspiracy theories can sort of tie all these pretty strange, disparate groups together and can give them some actual political influence in the mainstream.
So, I mean, and I guess it's a good time to address like whether, to what extent it's relevant, the propagators or the amplifiers of these conspiracy theories actually believe in them.
Right. Yeah, that comes up a lot, when I talk to people about folks like Alex Jones, and I would argue that it doesn't really matter, or this comes up a lot with Donald Trump specifically, is does he really believe this, or is he just making this claim, for attention and for political gain? And what matters is that he's making it. What matters is that he and Alex Jones and other people are trying to promote these ideas, and in some cases have spent a really, really long time doing it. Or someone like Roger Stone, who is a known sort of troll, a self-described dirty tricks artist. It's unclear what Roger Stone or Donald Trump or Alex Jones believe in their heart of hearts, but we know what they spend their time doing and trying to promote.
So, man, but what is different about this era in terms of the salience of this? I mean, obviously, conspiracy theories, like we say, go back a long time, and they're not, even pre-social media, right? They were there. I distinctly recall being in Gary Busey's house. It's a long story, but he had a series of VHS tapes that were all about changelings in Mount Shasta. And he claimed that if we watched these, we would have to go into the witness protection program. Now, they were still shrink wrapped. He had not opened them himself, but they, it was out there, like David Icke and that whole crew. Like what is different?
Ike,
Ike. What's the difference now?
That's more self-control than I would have given Gary Busey. Good for him.
That was the best as he got, believe me.
So I think that, yes, we know that conspiracy theories are an element, especially of American society and around the world. But we also know that conspiracy theories are strongest typically among people who are disempowered or disenfranchised, to give people a way to explain systems that are not working well, forces that they feel arrayed against them, systems in the United States like the healthcare industry or the financial industry that feel exploitative, or, when people's favored political party is not in power, they tend to turn to conspiracy theories. What we're seeing right now is a resurgence of conspiracy thinking used by the hands of powerful people and the powerless alike. The other thing that we're obviously seeing is the rise of social media and the ways that social media allows the spread of conspiracy theories. And also, though I think this can be over-discussed to a degree, but organized troll organizations like the Internet Research Agency in Russia, or bots who can aid in the spread of conspiracy theories. So we're seeing this mixture of of political influences and also sort of organic and inorganic means to spread conspiracy theories across social media. So we're seeing this really unholy confluence of stuff that is leading to the prominence and power and force of conspiracy theories in a way that we haven't seen for a really long time.
There's a lot to unpack there, but how much of the, I mean, you talk about the data shows that, you know, people who are just broadly powerless, I guess that can mean economically powerless, politically powerless, or even, I think, you know, sort of in some type of asymmetrical information dynamic, as it were. I mean, on some level, it strikes me as these things are like religions in some way, right? Like the people's ability to deal with modernity is just overwhelmed, and they turn to these things that are basically neatly describe what's going on.
Well, yes, I think they are a lot like religion. There are a lot of studies to show that the deeper somebody gets into conspiracy thinking, the more it sort of resembles religious faith. It actually, a lot of conspiracy theories, though, don't make things particularly neat or particularly tidy. You know, like the archetypal conspiracy image besides a tinfoil hat is that guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia standing in front of a bulletin board filled with photos, you know, tied together with red string, like a very chaotic image. You know, and so a lot of times conspiracy theories don't make a neat explanation, but what they do is they point really clearly at who to blame, who to be mad at. And that, in a way, is just as important for people as having a tidy narrative. A lot of conspiracy theories, you know, give people purpose and meaning to and direction to their lives, but they do it by creating a common enemy.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess it occurs to me, though that is not neat with the different sort of like pictures, there is a sense that there is a neat explanation out there, right? It's just like, it's a question of it's out there and we just got to find it. And which is also, I guess, sort of very much a religious exercise. But you also talk about there seem to be sort of, I guess, various levels of, I mean, so much of this cuts like on multiple different planes, but there seems to be sort of like various levels of, I don't know if justification or legitimacy for pursuing conspiracy theories, but in the African American community, there's a burgeoning, or has always been a market for conspiracy theories, largely because of some almost unbelievable things that have been done to that community. Discuss that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole chapter in my book that's about conspiracy theories among Black Americans, and the reason why they are unique is because they tend to tie really directly to actual things that happened to Black people over the course of this country's history. So one thing that I talk about in a lot of detail is the idea that during Hurricane Katrina, the levees were bombed on purpose to drown Black neighborhoods on purpose and drive people out and rebuild the city, you know, in a way more amenable to wealthy white people. And so while we don't have any evidence that happened, and there's a lot more evidence that the levees just failed, we do know that the levees just outside the city were purposely bombed during the Great Flood in the 1920s. And so the idea there is that a lot of conspiracy theories in the Black community tie indirectly to something that really did happen. You know, another really good example is that there's a lot of medical conspiracy theories, a lot of distrust. It's very hard to get people in the Black community to participate in medical trials for new drugs. And that is because of things like the Tuskegee experiment, where Black veterans who had syphilis were allowed to remain infected with syphilis for a very long time, long after the government knew what cured syphilis, because the government wanted to, you know, track the progression of the disease and see how it worked. And so there are all these examples of things that, you know, some number of Black Americans have come to believe because it is not that crazy to believe it. So this is really different than something like, say, QAnon or Pizzagate, where it has sort of less emotional and historical legitimacy and appeal.
I mean, so let's talk about like what QAnon and Pizzagate and where that where those come from, because it's I mean, these are people theoretically in power on some level, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really important to sort of recognize that, both Pizzagate and QAnon are fundamentally, so Pizzagate arose during the 2016 elections, and it was promoted by people who had a political reason to say that Democrats were part of a child sex trafficking ring happening in the basement of a pizza parlor. And Pizzagate was effective, and it was part of a number of strategies to, try to create distrust and division and sort of smears. And then QAnon fundamentally is a conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is secretly doing a really good job, and that his supporters, only need to wait, and soon he will, arrest all the evildoers, finally put Hillary Clinton in jail. So at their core, they are an idea that there is this sort of secret, powerful group of sexual predators, and that Donald Trump and people connected to Donald Trump are fighting them in secret.
I mean, this is where Alex Jones was too. I mean, there was a certain amount of pretzeling that had to happen. It seems to me, right? Because Alex Jones is like, the globalists will never let Donald Trump take office, which was a great thing to say when you were like everyone else, assuming that Donald Trump is not going to win.
Yeah,
when he
it was
wins,
very interesting.
When he wins, it completely undercuts the fact that there's this all-powerful cabal at the head of the world, essentially. Because how could they possibly not be able to pick the American president? What's the point of it?
Yeah, well, that's where the deep state comes in. That's where the idea of a deep state comes in, that they, tried mightily to prevent Donald Trump from winning, but when they couldn't prevent it, they then set themselves out to, work for his destruction for his whole presidency, right? But also, you'll notice that Alex Jones, so I had something in my book that we ultimately took out, but the day before Trump was inaugurated, Alex Jones recorded like a special episode of InfoWars. It sounded like he was on an airplane, and he's sort of like whispering hoarsely into his audio recorder, and he's having a meltdown, and he's saying, I know that the inauguration is not going to happen. They're not going to let it happen. It's not going to take place. I wish I could tell you what I know. And then, of course, it's just never mentioned again, that he's claiming to have evidence of this plot. But yeah, it's very confusing for people at some level who fundamentally believe themselves to be fighting this all-powerful system from the outside, and to realize, oh, wait, no, I suddenly have a much larger degree of power than I thought I did.
Do we have any sense of of how I guess the followers of an Alex Jones, to what extent they would take him seriously, and to the extent that they did, like, how did they deal with that? I mean, I know, like, I've seen research on Melanistic cults where, the world's going to end on Tuesday, and then Tuesday comes and the cult leader says, why it didn't is because Bernie wore shoes, and you're not supposed to wear shoes. And so the new date is, in 3 years, that type of thing.
Right. I mean, I think that, most people I've talked to, and I've been to a lot of conspiracy related events, most people tell me specifically that they take Alex Jones with a grain of salt, and that they do their own research and that they find their own facts. But I think also it's really hard to underestimate the power of people to just sort of create new narratives as soon as the old one doesn't work out. A lot of those doomsday cults that you reference, they don't disband the day after the world doesn't end.
Right.
That some of them hang on for years, I mean, it's very hard to talk yourself out of an idea once that idea is in your head, and it's far easier to just sort of slightly rework it to make it more or less jibe with reality as you now see it.
Right, because none of this is really so much about the specific ideas themselves. It really has more to do with, I mean, are there, do we have any data, or, I mean, how do we understand who is susceptible to conspiracy theories, or is that really a wrong question?
So most people in the United States specifically believe in at least one conspiracy theory. 50% of us, 1 in 3, most of us. So the type of conspiracy theory that you believe really has a lot to do with what your political and social and economic persuasions are. And also, like, in my experience, sort of how the systems of power in this country have treated you personally. Like, you and I are people who have some degree of power, of legitimacy. I don't think either of us have been particularly badly treated by the institutions in this country, so we have less need for conspiracy thinking. And that's a useful way to think about it, is what do conspiracy theories do for people? What do they provide in the face of their particular life circumstances?
And in the case of like, sort of white supremacists, they are also developing theories to explain away like why they're not actually supreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is where the idea of a deep state or a global cabal comes in, right? This idea that like they would be supreme, genetically they're supreme, but, because of these secret rulers of the world, they can't get ahead.
The Jews.
So,
You mean
the Jews? Yeah, the
right.
Jews. A lot of stuff about the Jews in there. It's amazing how often the Jews come up, and I do not just say this because I am Jewish and perhaps somewhat attuned to it, but really, Kelly Wheel at the Daily Beast writes a lot about flat eartherism, and she noted something to me recently that I had also been seeing, which is that even flat earth communities eventually turn into like Holocaust denial. Like there are so many conspiracy communities where the terminal stop on the train is some form of anti-Semitism in ways that is really surprising.
At one point we have to wonder, like, is that a coincidence or is there something to that?
I think that, right. That's a good joke. I acknowledge your joke. I think that in reality, yeah, you're welcome. I think that in reality, it is very useful to have a group of evil outsiders who we blame for a myriad of world events. And when all else fails, we have the Jews for that.
Right.
Like it is one of the oldest and deepest sort of conspiratorial ideas. So it just fundamentally, it's still around because it's useful.
I mean, Jews end up being like the Deus Ex Machina of all of these,
exactly.
of all of these things. When you've run out of being able to make any type of logical steps, the Jews step in to basically short circuit the thing.
We do that. I mean, I always tell these guys that, and they're always guys that I end up talking to who are white supremacists, you think about the Jews way more than I do. Like this is something that occupies you far more than it occupies me, but that's because, it has a purpose for them.
Where does UFOs fit into this?
So belief in UFOs is one of the sort of oldest and widest spread subcultures in the United States. Like certainly I believe in UFOs. I believe in the existence of aliens, and that's an okay thing for me to say. Right? That's one of the conspiracy theories that I can cop to believing that won't immediately have you hanging up the phone or will prevent me from getting jobs. Right. But at the same time, belief that the government is hiding what they know about aliens or UFOs or alien visitation, again, is pretty common because we know that the government has in the past covered up UFO research. Right. We found that out at the end of 2017, that there was a secret Department of Defense program that was studying UFO research. And we know that in the past, unexplained things have turned out to be research that the government was doing at Area 51. So again, belief in UFOs is fundamentally hooked into some level of government distrust.
I want to also jump back a little bit too in terms of another theme that seems to be run throughout a lot of this, and that's pedophilia.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly. I mean, and look, I don't know if you're familiar that I've had a personal experience with Mike Cernovich.
Yeah, I saw that.
Who is was one of the promoters of Pizzagate, as you know, and there seems to be, and I wish I could say that it was just on the right, but I remember the Gannon-Guckert conspiracy theory during the Bush years, which I don't know if
I don't know that one.
Oh, well, that is the one where there was a reporter, I use that in quotes, named Jeff Gannon, who was put in, and I can't remember by the name of the press guy, but it turned out that they found that Gannon had no real press credentials. He just worked as an escort at one point. I think it was he would get into a military outfit and was a male escort. And then suddenly he ends up with a website and having access to the president to ask questions. And then there became this huge thing that his name was not really Jeff Gannon. It was Guckert. And he had been kidnapped and had been like in the attic of the White House since the first Bush administration as a child, basically trafficked kid, in a part of a pedophile ring.
Right.
And it didn't get the prominence that, something like Pizzagate would, because maybe there wasn't social media in the same way. But
right.
But what is that?
So it's a couple things. Again, it does actually tie back to anti-Semitism. The idea of the blood libel, right, is literally medieval idea, which is that Jews were meeting in secret to ritually abuse Christian children and then kill them, right, to use their blood for matzah. And so the idea that your political enemies or opponents are not just evil, but are child abusers and are meeting in secret to abuse children ritually is very old. It's a medieval idea. And it also now does a couple things. It justifies any kind of action against your perceived enemy, right? Because if they're abusing children, what could be worse than that? And so it kind of justifies anything that you might want to call for. I hear a lot of people, all but calling for someone to be murdered when they're accusing them of being a pedophile, a secret ritual abuser, because, that type of language is considered to be acceptable when we're talking about those people. But it also is something that a lot of folks are able to do because there is so much actual predation and rape and sexual abuse in the world. I write about this a little bit in the book, but, I cover sexual violence quite a bit. I write frequently for Gizmodo Media's feminist website, Jezebel. And one thing that happened is that the Pizzagate folks were very excited when the Me Too movement started, because for them, Harvey Weinstein being a secret, extremely prolific rapist was proof. It was proof that there is this incredibly powerful cabal that does ritually abuse people.
I mean, there does seem to be some type of crossover. I think it was Corey Feldman was, in the news for a while for basically revealing that he had been abused.
Right.
And I don't know how that, to what extent that was substantiated. But I mean, some of this, I guess you get that story of R. Kelly, and all of a sudden, a lot of this sounds like it's all very possibly true.
Yeah, and again, actually, allegations like that are specifically against like famous people or people in Hollywood get trotted out over and over by the sort of QAnon and Pizzagate crowds because, again, it's seen as proof that extremely wealthy people are able to cover up horrifying abuse, which actually, is true. Like, we know that that's true. You only have to read the details of the sweetheart deal that Jeffrey Epstein got to know that people who are actual, abusers of children do occasionally get away with it if they have enough money and power and influence. So, yeah, that's sort of the tricky thing about a lot of conspiracy theories is that the ways that they hook into actual reality can be incredibly complicated, and it makes it really hard to dismiss a lot of things outright.
Let's talk about the deep state and Russiagate. What is your sense of how that breaks down?
Right. So essentially, my argument was, Russiagate was a group of people on the left, but not just on the left, who fundamentally became not just never Trumpers, but people who decided that Donald Trump was actually a Manchurian candidate, right? That he had been installed by his boss, Putin, and that he was sort of knowingly subverting American democracy. And what was so interesting to me about that is that accusation very much mirrored accusations that conservatives made about President Obama during his presidency. So the idea that the office of the presidency has been subverted by a foreign enemy, and has been taken over from within is not like uncommon. It's not a new accusation, but the ways that it sort of manifested in Russiagate were a little bit different because we had people like Louise Mensch, making these extremely sort of colorful claims about exactly who was doing the colluding or the subverting. And again, it was something that hooked into actual reality. We know that elements of the Russian government did try to influence the U.S. elections, and they did offer help to the Trump campaign. So again, this wasn't something that was completely out of nowhere. And then the deep state conspiracy theories almost arose like in opposition to that, where the narrative on the right was, no, there is no Russiagate, there is no conspiracy, there is no collusion. Instead, there is this powerful group of anti-Trump forces working within the government for his destruction. These unelected, holdovers was one more mild word they used. These unelected people working in the government for his destruction. And again, there was an unprecedented number of leaks from the Trump White House. And there was somebody who we still don't know who wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying, I work for the Trump administration and I'm trying to prevent him from carrying out his worst impulses. So both of those things had elements of truth within them, and they built up this sort of, it's like a pearl, there's this tiny little gritty, dirty core of truth, and this giant, much more politically useful thing accretes around it in a way that people can use and spread and share that makes political and social sense to them.
So, I mean, what is the, what's the, what ends up being, what do we do about this? I mean, is there, and is that even the right question to ask, I guess? I mean, because it seems like there's always going to be conspiracies, and certainly there always has been conspiracies. There's always going to be these deficits of power. Well, not necessarily these deficits of power, but there's always going to be some deficit, it seems to me, of information, right? Even to the extent of like the reason why Louise Mensch was able to create a sort of fantastical version of to the extent of what we know went down between the Russians and the Trump campaign. The fantastical version existed because the results of the investigation was not back yet. Right.
Exactly.
And that shouldn't have happened any other way, frankly, in terms of, but what do we do about this? And what's the sort of, I guess, the danger?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a couple answers. I have the sort of more optimistic one, and then I have my actual feeling. The optimistic one is that
this is the one for the book tour, and then the
then the actual sort of, so the optimistic version is that if we build a more just and transparent society, conspiracy theories sort of take care of themselves. They're always going to exist. They're always going to be there. That's fine. Like, we have a vibrant, free, open discourse, and that's great. And that means that we're always going to have guys at conventions selling Bigfoot literature or, stuff about the JFK assassination. Like, that's just a thing that's always going to happen. But we know that societies where there is a higher degree of transparency, where there's less economic inequality, where there's more trust in the press and the media, we see less sort of damaging conspiracy theorizing that kind of divides people and makes it hard to agree on any sort of concrete, tangible truths, right? And so my less optimistic response is that I think that if we were going to do any of that, we needed to do it about 30 or 40 years ago. And so now we have an American populace specifically who knows that the government, particularly the CIA and the FBI, have engaged in horrifying human rights abuses in the past, are probably capable of doing it again in the future. And we have an incredibly efficient social media machine that allows for the spread of conspiracy theories and hateful ideas at a volume that has really never been seen before in human history. We have a conveyor belt. And so even these sort of delayed responses trying to get it under control are probably not enough. So my actual answer is I don't know if it's really possible to pull us back.
So speaking to the less optimistic you, the idea was that technology has moved too far ahead of our of where we were positioned to basically deal with it. In other words, we needed to fix this stuff before. I guess we needed to fix the brakes before we got on the hill or going down.
Yeah, I think that would have been good. I think that would have been beneficial.
I wonder also to what extent corporate malfeasance also adds to this, because I mean, I spend a decent amount of time going to plaintiff attorney conferences, and when you hear what corporations are knowingly doing, what individuals in these corporations are knowingly doing, the choices that they knowingly make that are almost, even though the lawyers have seen this in black and white in the, via discovery, through emails or through reports, it makes you think that anything horrible is possible.
Yeah, and this comes up a lot, especially in the environmental movement, right? As there are so many examples of incredibly poor regulation of companies, dumping massive amounts of pollutants into the water and giving people cancer and then denying it for years and years and years. So yeah, there's a lot of very real sort of knowledge that corporations can't be trusted to police themselves, that they will do really evil things for as long as they get away with it, and that our government has, utterly failed to address that problem. So that comes up a lot for me when I'm talking to people in the anti-vaccine movement, right?
That's what I was going to say, exactly.
Yeah, so I was just at an anti-vaccine conference that I got thrown out of, unsurprisingly. But people always say the same thing to me, which is they say, how can you trust Monsanto? How can you trust Merck? And I say, well, I don't have to trust them to trust the science of vaccines, which is much broader than just the claims that those companies make. But again, this is another place where our sort of knowledge of American history and the sort of tilted wheel of how corporations work vis-a-vis the government really damages public trust.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of examples, sadly, of of the FDA allowing stuff that is not healthy.
Yes.
Or they don't even they're not in a position to make that determination.
Yeah.
And then the transparency, of course, in the context of the anti-vax stuff is the vaccination courts that exist that I think most people aren't aware of. They make sense, but when people find out about them, they're like, wait, what?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the vaccine injury compensation system in this country is that it exists because there were so many lawsuits, especially following the controversy over DTaP, that the government recognized that they had to come up with a way to redress and reimburse parents whose children did suffer an actual adverse vaccine reaction. They had to do it in a way that drug companies wouldn't stop making vaccines, because that's where we were heading, is that drug companies were getting so frightened of these lawsuits that they were just going to pull out of the vaccine market, because drug companies are value neutral and they don't care about whether or not people get measles or pertussis. They care about making money. But yeah, the existence of the vaccine injury court system and the fact that it's a no-fault system, the fact that it's a system that doesn't require drug companies to admit wrongdoing, is, again, something that makes people crazy. It gives people cause for so much suspicion. So again, there's so many things about the way that this country is set up that feeds these things in people's brains, rightly or wrongly.
It seems to me it would make a lot more sense if we were making our own vaccines as a government. And well, I mean, certainly, where we have control over the quality of the vaccinations. I was talking to somebody in April about cancer medication that had been tainted by jet fuel in China. But we're the American government to make vaccinations. To be the actual producer of these things, it would change the dynamic dramatically, it seems to me.
Sure, but it wouldn't necessarily change the conspiracy theorizing, because then it would be, whatever goes in the vaccines is going in there to make us docile as a population, right?
But that's different. That's different from what the construct of the anti-vaxxers is today, right?
Yes.
The anti-vaxxers today, their construct, it seems to me, is the companies stand to lose too much money to change the formulations and whatever. They use additives in there that keep it fresh or something that, end up creating a problem. I mean, in the early aughts, the idea that thimerosal could have been an additive that was causing this seemed to be still scientifically credible. The problem is for those people like those theories.
Oh my goodness, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I live across the street from a
They're coming to get you. They're coming to get you.
Yeah.
Thimerosal was taken out of the vast majority of these vaccinations. I think it was around 2003 and
2001, I think it was. But yeah,
we saw no discernible impact on things like autism rates.
Right. No, I mean, the fact remains too that the government and the United States have a really robust oversight of vaccines. It is not in anybody's interest for vaccines to make people sick. And even thimerosal, which is a preservative and was not proven to have any ill health effects at all, was taken out of childhood vaccines, most childhood vaccines other than some multi-batch flu vaccines, because the government didn't want people to stop vaccinating. This is another place where paranoia and suspicion fed into government action, because the idea was we have to do whatever we can to keep people vaccinating because that's the most important thing to public health. But yeah, I mean, it is really, really difficult at this point to figure out what would sort of get the anti-vaccine movement in particular to slow down. And I think we're seeing, recently that it is working. The uptick in measles cases across the world is evidence that it is working.
Right. Working in not a good way.
Right. Yeah.
Anna Merlan, the book is Republic of Lies, American Conspiracy Theorists and Their Surprising Rise to Power. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks. Time to head to the fun half. The number there, 646-257-3920. As you know, just a reminder, this program, this is no conspiracy, relies on your support for its existence. There's many dark forces out there trying to come after us. And your support provides us the top security that we need, obviously, and the countermeasures that we need to take. I'm not going to say any more, obviously. Why would I?
We are in an info war.
Totally impromptu. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can buy the Majority Report blend. Check it out. I guess we're a couple of weeks away from making a new, exciting announcement. So we'll wait. And we won't do it. Reminder, next week, Wednesday and Thursday nights, we will be doing live coverage of the Democratic debates. And so join us live. We will be doing that. In the meantime, today is...
He's not available.
What's that?
Daddy is not available.
Well,
it's debate night.
Debate night. Exactly. Michael, tonight is Tuesday night.
Yes, indeed.
So
we will be focusing on the role that vaccines played in Brexit, how they've damaged our cognitive capacity, what the industry does not want you to know. No, we're not going to be talking about that. Yeah, it's possible. Well, tonight on TMBS, we are going to be doing a lot of things, probably with a pretty heavy emphasis on what's going on with Iran. And a little, not huge, but we're going to be experimenting with a little bit of a different format tonight because, we have crew of about probably a little over a dozen great people from, say, Milton Alamati or Richard Wolff or Anna Kasparian. But tonight, Alona Minkowski, who's a regular on crew, is actually going to be a semi-recurring co-host of TMBS and lead her own segment as an example. So I'm looking forward to that. Which one? You like that? That amused you?
Yeah, the WoW did.
The WoW did. Okay. So fair enough. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. So that's tonight. Looking forward to that with Alona live at 7 o'clock.
Charge.
That one was better. We're going to be at live at, I actually use that one, I feel like. I like that one. We're going to be live 7 p.m. NYC time, Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. And then this weekend, we're going to be doing actually a deep dive on the history of the Democratic Party from a little bit of a different angle. We're going to loop it back specifically with the Rainbow Coalition.
Back to Sam Seder.
With Ryan Grimm, patreon.com/TMBS. Subscribe on the Michael Brooks Show on YouTube as well. We're about to hit our first 52,000 subscribers.
Only God, no other king.
Is that you correlating that with getting back to Sam Seder?
No, that was
one king.
That was your subscribers thing on YouTube. Jamie, go ahead.
This week on the Antifada, we have Sophie Weiner, night editor of Splinter News and displaced poster. That's right, she's a refugee from the posting wars who had to move to Australia after getting ratioed. Just kidding. She was back in town for a bit. So we talked about Australia. We checked in on our favorite media power couple, Barry and Bill Weiss-Marr. And mostly, we talked about a very cool socialist technozine that Sophie started with her friend Zoe Beery, and just like the liberatory potential of underground culture and how we can maybe create some kind of opening to make the world better by having a lot of fun on the weekend.
Literary Hangover coming up this Saturday, recording on Thursday night. Blithedale Romance by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's about the utopian socialists, and we talk about Hawthorne as an anti-communist writer.
All right. 646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half. Try that one more time. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238. 56, 27, 1/2, 5 eighths, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
You like if you had all those people come in? It's almost impossible to imagine. We will get to that in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It is the fun half, as you know, as you should know by now. That is what's happening here. We will be taking your IMs. via the app at majorityapp.com for both iOS and Android. We got to do an update. So we're having, it's a little bit hinky, but working for the vast majority of you, thousands of you. And you can IM the show, of course, with that app. Just get on there and it just IM the show. And that's the way that we sometimes communicate with some of you. Let's go to the phones, which is the other way in which we communicate with you. This is a 406 number. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, this is Brennan from Montana.
Brennan from Montana. What's on your mind?
Wow, awesome. Huge fan, by the way. Lula Livre.
Lula Livre.
I know Michael's back in, so that might make him happy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to it, I guess. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and sorry if you hear anything, my daughter's home sick today with me.
Unacceptable.
I know. So on Friday, June 14th, a guy called in about how semi-automatic handguns are used more often in crimes, shootings, things like that. I thought that this guy was a little bit of a schmuck.
Okay.
I mean, I understood his point that he was making, and I live in, like I said, Montana. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a pretty gun-saturated state.
I would imagine.
I mean, most kids I know would rather go hunting than play basketball or football here. And so you can imagine, like, the things that I hear when trying to talk about any form of gun reform. But, and you kind of alluded to it when you were talking to that guy, maybe in a joking manner. But he wanted, he was okay with some form of regulation, and you said that you wanted to make it just extremely difficult to obtain any of those weapons. And that's actually kind of where I stand.
Right.
So when he was talking about, like, making semi-automatic handguns the same, making it just as accessible as, say, a hand grenade. Because you don't see in the news that somebody, you know, threw a hand grenade into a school every week.
Right.
The reason for that is because you need what he didn't know, I'm assuming, it's called an FFL license in order to obtain those weapons. You go through extensive background checks, both federally and locally, to get that. And a lot of people have issue with that until, you know, it comes to getting their big, bad grenades and rocket launchers and stuff. So, yeah, I was just calling to see what you thought about that, maybe putting all semi-automatic rifles, extended magazines, suppressors.
That's exactly what I suggested. Like, I mean, I listen, I understand. I have been around hunting culture a decent amount, both on the East Coast to a certain extent and, you know, in the Michigan area. Done my share of skeet shooting and spent a decent amount of time around houses with a lot of dead animals on the wall, and I also know folks who you know take one deer a year, and that's the meat that they have for you know
Sure.
for over the course of a year. So I think, you know, in terms of weapons that are, you know, fairly standard hunting weapons, okay. But yes, for things that are like semi-automatic or quasi-assault rifles or assault rifles, things that have, you know, cartridges or magazines that are over a certain amount of bullets. I don't know what it is. I wouldn't mind over, let's say, 4, as it were.
Yeah.
But, you know, you need a special license. You need to go through some major hoops. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm all for that. But you know, we'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
Yeah, you do think that that's sort of a viable option rather than a ban? Then is maybe just making things so hard to get to that.
It really is.
Honestly,
Honestly, that's a question. The Supreme Court, and as the Supreme Court is constructed now, I don't know if that's a viable option, because as it was only about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less actually, when the court case, the name escapes me at the moment, determined that the Second Amendment was actually an individual right. And because that's a constitutional right, as per this Supreme Court, the abridgment of that right needs to be very much in the state interest, and it's subject to specific reviews that are, scrutinize it in a certain way. So I don't know. I don't know how the Supreme Court would rule on that, but I like that idea. I appreciate the call. I hope your daughter is feeling better. Okay, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we were sending 1,000 troops to the Middle East, as announced by Patrick Shanahan, who is the acting defense secretary. When I also made that announcement, I also noted that this guy was still the acting secretary of defense because he could not be confirmed yet by the Senate because his confirmation hearings had been delayed because the FBI was investigating him for corporate corruption, specifically with some military defense contractors. And it appears that the acting defense secretary, Patrick Shanahan, is no longer acting as the acting secretary, but rather he will be stepping down. Now, apparently, one of the issues that could be holding up the FBI investigation, according to Axios, is his complicated divorce. Apparently, there was an allegation that Shanahan hit her during a violent confrontation in 2010. Certainly wouldn't be out of character for the Trump administration to be having someone like that in their administration. Frankly, nor the corruption would be inconsistent with the Trump administration. So it's unclear. I imagine there's also another element to this. And it could be, and it really could go one way or the other. One, it could be that Trump thought, good time to have no acting Secretary of Defense, because that way Bolton and Pompeo couldn't possibly launch a war. And it gives us an excuse to back off. Or Pompeo and Bolton and folks in that camp told Donald Trump, you want to get rid of this guy. He is potentially problematic for your administration. And they don't want someone who is in that position who might be saying, hey, bad idea, starting a war with Iran. So either explanation seems to me to be completely viable. It's hard to believe that what's going on with Bolton and Pompeo in Iran did not factor into this in some fashion, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. But for the life of me, I can come up with two different scenarios that are 180 degrees from each other, and both could be possible. But you should be aware that there is very strange things happening in the administration. We can see, like many of the stories that we talk about in this program, and I've been saying for years, we see the shadows of this stuff. We don't see the actual activity. We just see, the light refracting off of it, or the lack of light that it in the shadow that it casts. And so when Trish Regan has some weird soliloquy about how war with Iran is being orchestrated by Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi, Mike Pompeo, and the Ayatollah, all to stop him from getting reelected because they're jealous of what a terrific economy it is. Maybe in Mulvaney for coffee.
I mean, it's so weird.
You got to speak in a deluded, paranoid idiot's terms.
I understand, but it's not even so much the way that she's speaking, because I understand that's the way that she's got to construct this story, because that's the only one that's going to motivate Trump. But the idea that Trish Regan, I don't think that Trish Regan was sitting at home, with all due respect to her as a journalist and broadcaster, I don't think that Trish Regan was sitting at home going like, it's up to me to stop this engagement with Iran. I'm going to stop this war, and I'm freelancing here. That to me.
Super confident that that's not what's happening.
I am very confident that's unlikely. And so someone is using Trish Regan to get a message to the president.
Use Trish to get to me.
This is the actual battle against the deep state. This is QAnon for real. Rupert Murdoch looked at his stock portfolio and realized a new massive destabilization of the Middle East was a bad idea. So he dropped a line to Trish Regan through an executive producer on her show to backdoor an idiot deluded message to Donald Trump that only he could understand. So in the middle of berating Barron for being too tall, he could pass on info to the generals to stop Pompeo and Bolton, Nancy Pelosi, and the Ayatollah from launching a war to undermine his terrific economic record and reelect.
Do you think it's possible that Trish Regan, after she recorded that, she literally just like pulled, ripped off and was like in a full body suit and then scaled down the side of the building on 6th Avenue?
Quite a role to have
one
to
of those
inhabit,
things?
like one of the dumbest anchors on television for 6 years. And really,
God, I can't believe I had to pretend to be this
part
stupid.
of the Avengers. Next, I have to go meet with Iron Man.
Archer.
So speaking of talking points, you know how for years there has been this massive concern with all of the immigrants that are pouring into this country from Africa at the southern border, right? We've been talking about this for years. But it's obviously been extremely hushed terms because within the course of a day, we have clips now from 3 or 4 different shows on Fox that have all of a sudden discovered that not just folks from Latin America come into the states through the southern border. The other day we reported on a 7-year-old girl from India who died in the desert around the area where Scott Warren, I think his name is, who is on trial for leaving water for people like that around that area. Donald Trump is launching his campaign tonight. And not coincidentally, he announced that there's going to be a massive roundup of undocumented immigrants in the millions. Of course, it won't be in the millions. It will be in the thousands. And because it's in the thousands and not the millions, everyone will sigh a sigh of relief as opposed to just the outrage and disgust that should be involved in this type of terrorization in the first place. But commensurate with the official launch of the Trump 2020 campaign, we have a new group of people who are not white, obviously, to be worried about, according to Tucker Carlson, as he talks to Andrew Arthur of the Center for Immigration Studies. And I put that in quotes.
Because their ultimate goal is to come to the United States and live and work here permanently. And this is something that I saw when I was an immigration judge with Somalis. It's just simply become a new group of nationals from Central Africa now who have heard about how open the American borders are and who want to come and exploit them.
The population growth in that part of the world, particularly on the continent of Africa, suggests that, this flood could become a torrent No?
Absolutely. And there's, without the support of our southern neighbors, in the absence of support from the United States Congress, we truly would just be overwhelmed with individuals, from poor countries who have literally sold everything that they had to make the journey to the United States. In fact, I think the New York Times reported one woman said she didn't have $1 to her name by the time that she arrived in the United States. Yeah. But they do it because they know that they're going to come here. And, when looking at a U.S. wage every day, it's a smart economic decision to make. Till Congress acts, it's just going to continue.
Right.
I would do this. Is he talking about all of our great-grandparents in this room who come to America with barely a penny in their pocket because the streets are paved with gold? Oh, no, he's not. He's talking about Africans.
It's just going to continue.
Right. I would do the same. I don't judge them. I judge our leaders. It's going to overwhelm our country and change it completely. And for
yes, can you imagine just how dramatically different this country would be if we had a lot of black people here? Can you imagine? From Africa, of all places. One could only imagine.
It would be definitely like something we haven't had as a country. In fact,
not the real country.
Not the real country. Well, I think that's one of the things, though, that really does trigger the right in this country is like, if you go across the world, you can, and again, this is not a justification for any like particular policy, obviously, but like you can sort of roughly, you can say like, look, Ghana is an African country. France is a European country. And they want to be able to say the United States is a European country, but it's not. I mean, United States is by definition a outgrowth of, first of all, the people that was genocided that lived here first. And then it is, in fact, a part of Africa in the sense of diaspora. It's a part of Europe, obviously. I mean, the fact that it literally cannot even be put into that lineage really freaks these people out, just as a historical matter of fact. And the other thing that's so disgusting, by the way, if Tucker wants to say that I blame the leaders, then do 50 segments a day on debt relief for Africa and stop, supporting U.S. and corporate exploitation of the continent and deal with those issues if you want to blame the leaders and not people fleeing conditions.
And the way that we've talked about
I don't think that will be happening. I'm pretty confident that won't be happening. I'm just offering a door here.
Their use of the phrase West points to that envy about like they wish they were West like France is West.
Yes.
But America's not like that, guys.
And West is not West either.
Right,
we've already talked about that, but particularly America. I mean, America is literally not a European country. It is a everything country, which should in fact be to our advantage.
Well, it's textbook that Camp of the Saints shit, right? Where these immigrants were portrayed as these like brown invading hordes who just bred like animals coming to destroy the West, which was already an apocryphal idea in France in the 1970s when the book was written, and it spotlights how apocryphal that is, that they're talking the same way about the U.S.
Well, there were abolitionists who had racist reasons for being abolitionists in America. They thought they were bringing too many Africans here.
So we just played a clip of Tucker Carlson.
Can I just also add, that guy used to be an immigration judge. That should be a great indictment.
Well, yeah, he said that.
I know. I just want people to not gloss over that. Another great indictment of our system right there.
How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet I could guess who appointed him?
I am sure you could guess who appointed him.
I would say the name of that president ended with a B or with a T. Tucker Carlson. We just watched a clip of Tucker Carlson warning all of us about the new flood of immigration that is coming from Africa, and how the idea of a torrent of people from Africa will change the country in a way that would be almost unrecognizable.
Goes from a flood to a torrent.
Flood to a torrent. And just the idea of this many people from Africa would just change the nature of America, which has no connection whatsoever to Africa and never has. Well, maybe this is just a one-off. I mean, Tucker Carlson, I don't know that had ever spoken about this before, but it couldn't be that someone is launching their campaign tonight and really wants to scare Americans in some way or play on perhaps some bigotedness or prejudice towards certain group of people. No, that can't be, because if it was, we would tune into Laura Ingraham after Tucker and all of a sudden she'd be
This is like the Congo and other African countries are being basically, they're repopulating Portland, Maine with a huge contingent of these immigrants, these migrants. And it's overwhelming the Maine authorities. I mean, they're pretty liberal up there. They're like, we can't take any more people. We're full up. But they're hoping to go there.
There you go.
A contingent.
This is the same.
Do you know, can I just
please
note one thing? Whenever they're talking about the immigrants, they pause like they're trying to search for a word and
dehumanizing language.
It's almost as if like that pause communicates to their listeners, like, you know what I really want to say.
Right.
But I'm on TV, got to say immigrants or migrants.
That's precisely what it is.
Who talks about a group of people like a contingent of people? Like, what are you talking about?
And I just want to say, I mean, what's so, like, just to draw like a really tight line, because she mentioned Maine. So actually, before I went to base, it actually had cooled down a bit before I went there, and I would assume with some recent things that happened after I was there, it got worse again. But there's a very big Somali and I think some Sudanese refugee community in Lewiston, and in fact, like, yeah, if you want to talk about it on economic terms, Lewiston is a classic, like, decimated mill town that has one ultra privileged college that has nothing to do with the rest of the town. And yeah, these refugees came in and they did generate some new economic activity in the town. That's literally how this stuff works. Right. Now, this was a mecca, of Klan activity before, like in early aughts. This was like a major thing, and they used precisely the same rhetoric she's using now to talk about exactly the same dynamics that she's talking about. So it's just like, whether or not it's even a direct line, it's just a replication of something that was thought of as like, look at this horrifying oddity. It was even covered as like, look at the college kids teaming up with the immigrant community and good local people fighting against this. And now it's talking points on America's main cable network.
Yeah, and you can also draw a direct line to the Great Replacement panic in manifestos of multiple white supremacist murderers, like in the recent past. So this stuff has real world consequences.
Got to do something before the flood becomes a torrent. That's the only part.
Have you? Do you think anyone's ever been in a flood and then it's like, oh crap, this flood has become a torrent now?
First it was just a flood.
I mean, I can deal with a flood, but a torrent.
So Stuart Varney was on Fox and Friends, and he was singing the praises of Bernie Sanders' initiative to force Amazon to pay a $15 minimum wage. Oh, wait a second. Have I got that wrong? Oh, no, wait a second. That's not it. He's going after AOC for pointing out that Amazon only recently did that.
Well, there you've got AOC ramping up her fight against Amazon, accusing Jeff Bezos of becoming the world's richest man by paying his workers starvation wages, as she said.
Here to react, Stuart Varney, host of Varney & Company on the Fox Business Network.
You want my reaction?
Oh, how about it? The floor is yours.
Well, I just did a little research, okay?
Okay.
Amazon pays $15 an hour to all full-time, part-time, temporary, and seasonal workers. All full-time.
How long has that been the case? Do we know? Has it been 3 months? 6 months? It was shortly after Bernie Sanders basically threatened to bring up legislation. October 2018. Now, I would imagine Jeff Bezos has made an extra $1 billion between October of 2018 and now. It's conceivable. But He was the world's richest man at that point. And it may be correct that AOC is being a little bit limited. He also became the world's richest man by skirting around state taxes for many, many years, having a competitive edge in that he didn't pay, he skirted taxes and didn't pay people living wages and forced people to stay locked in warehouses without taking pee breaks.
Bootstrap the Postal Service.
Yep. Here we go. Let's hear what Stuart Varney, though. But now is Varney going to give credit where credit's due for those raises that the Amazon workers got? I don't think so.
All full-time workers get medical coverage, a 401k, company-paid life insurance, short-term and long-term disability insurance, maternity and parental leave. I hardly think that is starvation wages.
Well,
that's nonsense.
Amazon put out a statement. They detailed a lot of that stuff. They say that our Staten Island facility people there earn between $17.30 an hour and $23 an hour.
Yeah, and the company that when Amazon wanted to come to New York City, and AOC said no, Amazon
to create 25,000 jobs.
25,000 jobs, which paid an average of over $100,000 a year. That's not starvation wages. What AOC is doing here is trying to go up against Trump's prosperity. The Democrats are trying to run against Trump's successful economy. So they have to criticize it and say, okay, it's just not fair. You got billionaires, we don't have billions, you got it, I want it, we're going to take it. That's what they're saying. It's jealousy. They're running on emotion, not fact. Big deal.
I heard someone say it's stealing. They're stealing from people who have really worked hard. Jeff Bezos worked really hard to start this company, a company that we all depend on now. And they wanted to move here to New York. And this is the congresswoman who said no.
Look, it's classic socialist propaganda.
Pause it for 1 second. Can we do the math on this? Can we do the math? How many billions times more did Jeff Bezos work harder than the rest of us? Right? I mean, how many billions does he have? Do we know?
Many.
Does he have hundreds of billions? Is he? So he's worked, I don't even have
154 billion.
Okay, so I don't want to talk about this, but I don't have $1 billion.
I expect Jeff Bezos to fund a lifestyle where
and
we
Jeff
can
Bezos
work remotely less than him as much as
Jeff
would be
Bezos has worked 100 billion times harder than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He works like 50-hour weeks.
And a junior congresswoman who still has more power than him. That's how it works. He came to New York, and there wasn't a massive grassroots uprising against the corporate giveaway to Amazon. She just was like, "I'm sorry, no, I'm tweeting it. You're not coming. So no, thank you."
This is why billionaires always talk about how they work like 80-hour work weeks, and what they really mean is they check email in the Uber,
exactly.
For 4 hours
Jeff
night.
Bezos is like checking it and like on his helipad while he tries to cut his wife out of, like in divorce settlement.
Those tax breaks were stolen from him by us. Okay, he earned those tax breaks
by working 100 billion times harder than the rest of us.
Oh my God! Could you imagine being such a cuck and actually buying into this?
I want it, we're going to take it. That's what they're saying. It's
yes,
jealousy.
That's true.
They're running on emotion, not fact. Big deal.
I heard someone say it's stealing. They're stealing from people who have really worked hard. Jeff Bezos worked really hard to start this company, a company that we all depend on now. And they wanted to move here to New York. And this is the congresswoman who said no.
Look, it's classic socialist propaganda, drumming up an emotional response to prosperity.
But what is she not?
I'm going to take a self-care day, so I don't really even have time for this. But I just want to say up top, first of all, Jeff Bezos, no.
Yeah.
I don't feel good today.
I don't feel good about it.
Finally, the Democrats are running on what the American people want, which is to be against prosperity and to be against gamers.
That's right. That's the American people are just crying out for an opposition to luxury and prosperity.
We all rely on Jeff Bezos now, and the idea that he might just stop it. If we take some of his billions of dollars, he could just stop, and then where would we be?
they really can't decide how they feel about Jeff Bezos, because I feel like a few months ago he was being smeared as a liberal.
Right.
Hey, easy on the Bezos defense.
But now
guys.
they have to defend him against the newly elected socialist dictator queen of New York.
Trump's tweeting like, "No, I stopped the deal. I stopped it because it was very unfair." That's actually the good instincts that Trump has. That's what steads him well, is that he would recognize that actually you want to be on the right side of lying about that.
What's going on with Fox, by the way? What's going on there?
Let's play this. So Seb Gorka on his radio show. I don't know how many people listen to Seb Gorka.
On Facebook
I think
Live.
basically us. I think this is like at the point where the only people consuming it are those that are so invested in making fun of him.
People
even
prank
after
phone calling him.
He's completely irrelevant.
I once received a phone call from a right-winger when I was on terrestrial radio telling me that our enemies were laughing at us because Dick Durbin wore a pink tie on the Senate floor.
Wait, did they actually, was that their version of a prank call?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm willing to accept that they're laughing at us because of Dick Durbin, period. But not
The era of the pajama boy is over.
Well, and how do we know the era of the pajama boy is over? Well, because Seb Gorka has a radio show, ladies and gentlemen. And he's still learning the ropes, still trying to figure out how to deal with some of his more contentious callers. And here he is trying to defend the president.
Let's go to line 4. Jane in Atlanta. Welcome to America First.
Hi, yes, Mr. Gorka. I was just calling to touch bases with you about how come I don't like Trump. And I just don't particularly care for Trump because he likes to grope women by the vagina while he's married.
Jane, can you tell me, how do you know that he's actually done... Jane.
Because he said it.
Jane.
We heard it. We
So-
heard it.
so-
we heard it. We
so
heard
what?
It. We heard it. He said it out of
Yeah,
time.
but does that mean he did it?
And how come he won't
Jane,
brandish?
stop
why he doesn't
talking
show
or
us
we
his
drop the
gun?
line. Jane, you got to stop talking and let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How
Mr.
do you
Gorka.
know he actually did that? And remember, he said that when he was a Democrat, so let's not forget that. How do you know he did that?
Oh, wow, Mr. Gorka, you are
Answer
a
the
mess.
question.
Semantics.
Answer
You're
the
a
question.
Semantics man.
Answer the question.
You learned
How
the
do
game
you
of
know?
Semantics very well, sir.
Jane, you don't want to answer the
Also,
question, do
I
you?
don't.
Closer, but no.
Can we take that as a sound drop? You are a semantic man. Could apply to
He was
so
talking
many
over it. I
things.
tried.
Well, one of the ways that you could know that he did that would be to look at the allegations by over a dozen women who made such allegations. In fact, I think number was closer to like 17.
When he was a Democrat.
Doesn't count.
So
that was a Democratic.
Let's go
Democrat hand that was doing that grabbing.
by your own logic, Gorka, what if he did only just say it? Is that the type of thing you want to say when you're a married man?
There you go. But it was a Democrat mouth that said those words. It was Democrat at that time.
He makes a mistake. You never throw something out that they can have easier to respond to, and he tries to make her respond to the original question.
What's that? So what do you mean?
Like, he said the thing about, by the way, he was a Democrat, which is much easier to respond to because it's just clearly something you shouldn't say. Like, obviously, that's not a real defense.
That's not a defense, but it's a disease. And if you can get rid of the disease, then you would never grab another one again. Here's Tom Cotton, who literally they should give him a drum because he is so desperate to start this war with Iran. He is stepping into the void that John McCain left for being the greatest warmonger in the Senate. This is a guy who you should be very concerned about because if Donald Trump loses in 2020, Tom Cotton is sure to be running for president in 2024. In fact, if Donald Trump wins in 2020, Tom Cotton is sure to be running for president in 2024. And he may sound like a lunatic, but also know this guy not only served in the military, but also went to Harvard. So he's a well-educated lunatic. And those are very scary indeed. Here he is on Fox News, basically saying the opposite of what Trish Regan said on Fox Business News.
Listen to Trish.
Regan,
Hashtag listen to Trish.
Trish Regan was telling the president, don't listen to Nancy Pelosi, who wants you to go to war with Iran because she wants to win in 2020. Tom Cotton is on a slightly different page.
And, inflames the U.S.-Iran issue. Why? What is the purpose? I'm not going to accuse anybody of instigating anything, but for not having a policy that would smooth the waters, so to speak. I think he probably knows there's no appetite for war among the American people.
I imagine you know that when she says he, she's talking about the President of the United States, and she's saying that basically he inflamed the situation by tearing apart the Obama nuclear deal.
Ed, I have to say I'm surprised and a little disappointed that Nancy Pelosi sounds like she's siding with the Ayatollahs just a few days after they attacked commercial vessels in the open seas of the Gulf of Oman.
There you go.
I mean, yes, after that whole story has already been pretty thoroughly debunked within hours of it taking place, including by the Japanese head of the company whose vessels were attacked. And also, I think, looping back on this, to me, I've heard some more analysis on this, and there's one limited case of Iran saying, look, we're going to start, basically punishing the United States for recklessly tearing up this deal. It still doesn't make sense why they would attack a Japanese and Norwegian vessel. What makes a lot of sense is that the Emiratis and the Saudis, who are hell-bent on this, would be pushing for this every step of the way, and also in the context of the Japanese prime minister being in Iran trying to restart a diplomatic process. That was why he was there. It wasn't just a normal bilateral meeting. It also involved this stuff.
Tom Cotton wants his war.
Tom Cotton is a menace in every respect to this country. And also Tom Cotton was the organizer, I believe, with the letter that undermined the Obama negotiations to begin with, and a shocking disregard of any. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
letter?
where they basically said, we will overturn this deal.
Yes.
Let's hope that he doesn't have the Trumpian quality where you can say whatever you want and a certain group of people will believe you.
I think Republicans are like that.
I don't know if that's a Trumpian quality as much as it is a Republican quality.
I think it's a Republican quality, but I think it's quite safe to say that whatever bizarre charisma Trump does have, Tom Cotton is not endowed with.
Not
rich. Not
speaking of which, the calls for impeachment are becoming stronger. Saw polling that the idea of an impeachment inquiry is now growing. Fox News did a poll the other day that showed the majority of people want an impeachment inquiry. Maybe a plurality wants an impeachment inquiry where he is booted and gone. But then there are others who just want an impeachment inquiry. It is gaining popularity. I do not buy the theory that you hear from some people that Nancy Pelosi is just being strategic about doing this. Again, I call your attention to her appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, where she claimed that impeaching him and then having it go to the Senate where he would not be convicted would make it impossible to prosecute him criminally after the fact. That's absurd. Maybe she misspoke, but that's a very specific thing to misspeak. I think she definitely does not want impeachment, but it does feel like sometimes the ship sails regardless of whether you're on it or not. And one of the people who's helping push that ship from the docks, I bring you one of the rock stars from the new incoming congressional class of Democrats.
Definitely. In fact, I would say like an indie group that is building more and more underground momentum.
Katie Porter of California. Here she is on a video she posted to Twitter the other night.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Katie Porter. Today I wanted to speak directly to the people of California's 45th District. There's been a lot of noise in D.C. and in the press about impeachment, so I wanted to share my thoughts with you. I've spent hours reading and analyzing the Constitution, articles written by leading scholars, and the 200-year history of our democracy and its system of checks and balances. After weeks of study, deliberation, and conversations with Orange County families, I've decided to support an impeachment investigation of the president. I have not come to this easily. I come to this decision after much deliberation, and I know deeply what this means for our democracy. I didn't come to Congress to impeach the president. I ran to use my decades of consumer advocacy to help Orange County families. I ran to fight back against big pharma and outrageous prescription drug pricing, to help families with the crushing costs of childcare, and to take on the affordable housing crisis hurting our community. And I will continue to do those things and much more. But when faced with a crisis of this magnitude, I cannot with a clean conscience ignore my duty to defend the Constitution. I can't claim to be committed to rooting out corruption and putting people over politics, and then not apply those same principles and standards in all of the work I do. I've reached a point of clarity in my decision. Congress must continue the work of Special Counsel Mueller. In his report and public remarks, Director Mueller emphasized that under current law, he did not have the option to indict the president. But despite the limits of his authority, the special counsel was clear that he could not exonerate the president. And he presented extensive evidence of obstruction of justice that requires continued investigation by Congress. The administration has refused to respect the rule of law. They have ignored multiple subpoenas. They've directed current and former high-ranking officials to disregard summons to testify, and the president has continued his efforts to spread mistrust of our law enforcement, contempt for our journalists, and false information about the law, Director Mueller's findings, and basic uncontested facts. The question is not whether a crisis is in our midst, but rather whether we choose to fight against it. I've been a congresswoman for 5 months now, and serving you and my country is one of the greatest honors of my life. But I came to this position as an attorney and a law professor, a mom to 3 amazing kids, and as a patriot. And I will continue to draw on that and on our love of this country and its principles as we navigate this trying time.
I mean, there's literally, I think, like 2 or 3 freshman Congress women who have been in Congress for 5 months who I think could walk into the presidential race and maybe win. I mean, I think she's one of them. I think she could theoretically. I mean, I think if she, I'm not suggesting she do this or anything, but just her ability to present stuff that anyone else, virtually anybody else, would be demonized over. I mean, it's like, how do you? I'll tell you who you'll never see on Fox News. Is they will?
Oh, no.
They will never ever play Katie Porter on Fox News because they need a lot of time before they figure out what the angle is here. Because she looks like, I think, like their mom or their daughter. I mean, on that, everybody who watches that. I mean, she looks like she just came out of, like a suburban home in Ohio or something. And then just says, like, this is the most reasonable path to follow. And look, she's right. There's a multitude of things that you could bring up in impeachment hearings regarding Donald Trump. Everything from obstruction out of the Mueller investigation I actually think that there is enough evidence to make an indictment of some form of collusion with in regards to the election. One could argue soliciting a foreign government for help that they knowingly knew could happen is a violation of election law. But nevertheless, certainly stuff with the census question. There was new reports out today. They found emails that showed collusion between a Republican operative and members of the Commerce Department, specifically about the census. And the Commerce Department has argued in court that they had no contact whatsoever with this guy. So there's a myriad of things that can be brought up. And I think Nancy Pelosi, someone in the Democratic leadership, needs to start introducing the idea that it is Congress's job to look at impeachment. It is the Senate's job to convict. And if they don't convict and they don't even look at the question, they are shirking their responsibilities. You impeach Donald Trump because you must hold him accountable, because you must fill the vacuum that would exist over the next 12 months. And you impeach Donald Trump because it's really an impeachment of the Republican Party. And you use their refusal to even address the question, which is exactly what they will do. They will refuse to address the question. They will pretend it's not happening. And the way you define this is before you even start the impeachment inquiry. You set this up. We have our job. They have their job. You set it up so before the thing becomes highly politicized, because it will be, before the Republicans in the Senate say, these are the Democrats doing this, you set up the dynamic. You've got to set up these pins before you knock them down. And that's the biggest failure that Nancy Pelosi has. She should be setting up like this dynamic of, I know people feel it's the House's job, and certainly it's the House's job, but if it was the House were to do this, it would be the Senate's job to convict. And they can choose yes or no, because Mitch McConnell will not have a day's worth of hearings on this, because he knows if he did, it would be a problem. So they should be setting it up right now that it's within the Senate's rights to look at this and not convict, because they won't even do that. And that failure is where you get your political advantage from, in my estimation. Let's go to the IMs. Train boy. Shame on us for kidnapping over 5,000 children, holding them for ransom in concentration camps, sometimes until they die. Abolish ICE. Prosecute its officials and give restitution and amnesty to their victims now. Agreed. MIDI doctors. Please remind everyone on YouTube to hit the like button. Also in the UK, where you're experiencing one-party vibe as Boris Johnson is coronated leader via US-style TV debates, as though contrary public opinion doesn't exist. Frankly, we're coming apart at the seams. That said, I believe we've reached peak Brexiter, and sanity is slowly washing back into the discourse. Hit the like button. Hit the like button, folks. Aaron from Ontario. Great interview today. It's insane how pizza gators will shoot up a pizza joint looking for an underground child sex rings, but not a peep from them when it comes to actual documented proof of the sexual and physical abuse of migrant children at the border. Do they think migrant children aren't human, or is it just brainworms? I imagine it's not an either-or question. Water boat from Kashmir. Better campaign slogan for Sam. It doesn't work that way. And Michael doing Sam's voice, please. It doesn't work that way. I love Sarah Palin. Hey, Sam, I just want to correct an ignorant comment Matt made yesterday about UBI and administrative costs. Okay, if UBI was passed, we would save money on administrative costs by using blockchain technology to administer the plans. Sam, on the impeachment thing, we have to be a little strategic. We have to delay impeachment until we need it. People want to impeach him in the first few months of the emoluments thing. Nothing is wrong with having a slow drip of negative information come out about an unpopular president with a capped upside. We should save impeachment for after we expose all his corruption or when we need it, if it's like a Supreme Court justice retires. I think Clinton's impeachment took over a little over a month, and we may need that month during the race. That is a...
I just cautioned that a lot of people reacted to the way the Kavanaugh thing went down because it looked like it was just about political expedience and not the actual allegations about him. So I don't know about that.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, maybe that's Nancy Pelosi's, 37-dimensional chess. Eve from Texas. I read a study that there's more likely correlation with autism as a complication of a sperm contributor being older than 40. But no one is doing huge info campaigns and legislation about that. That's what I've read as well. People would prefer to blame government, etc., than to have a serious, thoughtful discussion with their doctor and partner. Zero Sum Sam. Hi, MR Crew. Today, a YouGov poll revealed the lunacy of 10,000 conservative members that will elect the UK Prime Minister. 63% prefer to have Brexit even if Scotland leaves the UK. 61% prefer to have Brexit even if the UK economy takes a significant damage. 59% prefer to have Brexit even if Northern Ireland leaves UK. 54% want Brexit even if it destroys the Conservative Party. And now the kicker, 51% would prefer Brexit not to happen if it meant that Jeremy Corbyn became the next prime minister. Sociopaths. Conservatives are sociopaths. Yeah, that's a little bit weird. Liberal communists, my fellow wobblies and syndicalists out there will know that there is a surprising lack of syndicalists or IWW patches out there. Could a fellow worker get on that? Well, you got the Socialist Convention coming up right now, right? The conference?
Yeah, spread the word.
Keen observer. Hey, Sam, just wanted to let you know that even with all those relatable young people in the studio, I'm 25, I think you're a really cool dude with great style and friendly charm. Thank you. I also do not mind at all when you pause video clip 2 to 3 seconds in. It's just your swagger.
Thank you.
Sending love and appreciation from Olympia, Washington. Thank you. You are indeed a keen observer. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 517 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Studio, I'm 25. I think you're a really cool dude with great style and friendly charm.
Is this the least annoyed you're going to ever be with a playback?
I also do not mind at all when you pause video clips
517.
3 seconds in. It's just your swagger. Thank you. Sending love and appreciation from Olympia, Washington. Thank you. You are indeed a keen observer.
Oh, we can review our performance this way.
Instant replay.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 517 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yo.
Wow.
Hey, dude.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. We had to wait a long time for you to catch up.
Hello?
Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Sorry. This is Sam from Michigan.
Oh, well, in that case, hello, Sam.
So I've been trying to get through for a couple days. My point was actually about the debate lineups.
Okay.
So the way that I see it, the debate lineups aren't so much good for Biden as bad for, or necessarily bad for Bernie as they are bad for Warren. That, like, she's sort of out of the title fight, and I see a good chance that Tulsi Gabbard, being sort of self-serving and self-interested, will see it as a chance to go after her on foreign policy.
She should. She should. That wouldn't be
Meanwhile,
self-interested of Tulsi Gabbard at all. She should attack Warren on foreign policy.
No,
That's
Warren,
like the main
Warren
thing I
is,
like about
is
her.
bad on
Certainly
foreign policy.
she should be, but and I guess where I'm coming there is more that, Tulsi might be willing to go further than Bernie would. Maybe self-interested isn't the right phrase.
Well, I mean, she has a different set of incentives.
She has less to lose.
Yeah, she has a different set of incentives, and I don't think that I would be surprised to see Bernie. I mean, frankly, I'll be surprised to see Bernie go after Biden directly too. To be honest with you, I mean, it's possible he might, but I would be surprised to see him do that. I've tried to game this out in my head quite a bit in terms of Warren, but I think it's going to be helpful to her because she is going to be seen as, for one night on Thursday or Wednesday night, she is going to be seen as the front runner, right? Because she's going to be seen in that context, and that is a helpful place to be. From my perspective, I would have rather seen her on the stage with Biden because I think she would have gone after Biden directly. I don't think she's going to do that as much in this context. I bet if I was her advisors, I would be telling her, you don't go after anybody because you are the front runner in this debate, and you let everybody come at you.
Or if you're going to go after anybody, just go after Biden anyways, frankly.
Right,
keep it focused on, I'm saying you make your large macro points about what you're trying to do. And if you want to hit anybody, you could hit Biden even though he's not there. I think that, I think that Warren should be hit very strongly on foreign and military policy for whoever does it. But I think Bernie, you're going to see Bernie hit Biden on trade. I actually am pretty confident that will happen. And I think that the other dynamic is that random collection of like loser candidates are all going to pile up on Bernie with like hacky democratic socialism talking points. And that'll be the other dynamic.
Hey, don't talk that way about Marianne.
Yeah. Oh, no, Marianne will be cool. I like Marianne. I like her vibe.
Sam, appreciate the call.
That was sort of...
We shall see. Tune in. We'll see if you are right.
It'd be cool if Marianne Williamson put a voodoo curse on somebody, but she's not cool like that.
Calling from 806 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Ben from West Texas.
Ben from West Texas. What's on your mind, Ben?
Hey, I wasn't sure if any of you guys saw the big controversy from yesterday on the Daily Wire type people's radar with this Kyle Kashuv kid having his admission to Harvard rescinded for his
let me just catch people up on this. He was one of the students involved in Parkland shooting. He came out of it and is conservative. He was basically saying that, was advocating no gun control in the wake of this. He was admitted to Harvard, and apparently in the past couple of days, it has been released, and I think with some help of Mike Cernovich and Jacob Wall, although it's unclear, photos of a WhatsApp chat or some other chat device from 2 years ago where he's using the N-word and spewing some racist bile, is my understanding. Here is an example of it. And he subsequently posted an apology that he sent to Harvard. I don't know if maybe an apology is not the right word, but he doesn't say the words "I'm sorry" in it. I can actually read it. You know what? Why don't you put this up? Because it's here it is. I have recently been made aware of screenshots circulating that include offensive comments former classmates and I made a few years ago, long before the shooting. I want to address this with honesty and transparency. We were 16-year-olds making idiotic comments, using callous and inflammatory language in an effort to be as extreme and shocking as possible. I'm embarrassed by it, but I want to be clear that the comments I made were not indicative of who I am or what I've become in the years since.
How many years could that have possibly been?
Well, 2 years. Exactly 2 years.
It was 2 years. Yeah.
The past year has forced me to mature and grow in an incredibly drastic way. My world, like everyone else's in Parkland, it was turned upside down on February 14th. When your classmates, your teachers, and your neighbors are killed, it transforms you as a human being. I see the world through different eyes and am embarrassed by the petty, flippant kid represented in those screenshots. I believe I've gotten those I've gotten to know since then and know that I'm a better person than that. I can and will do better moving forward. And then Harvard rescinded its admission to him. So everybody's caught up. What's your thoughts?
Oh, I was amused by the, I don't know, there seemed to be a big deal yesterday. A lot of people thinking this is a huge misstep from Harvard. A lot of people on the right, I should clarify, huge misstep from Harvard, and saying that it's, I think Michael Tracy had some thoughts on it as well, but he just was saying, not Michael Tracy, but just in general, that like the idea that you would hold high school kids accountable for something they said when they were 16, when they're applying for college, the idea that a college would hold over your head something you did when you were 16 during your high school career as a factor in your admission, I just thought that was a little silly, to say the least. And also, Ben Shapiro, I think at one point, he did a segment on it, and he was talking about how, you know, these were silly things being said, and, you know, like, you know what 16-year-olds do? They do this because they're dumb. 16-year-olds are dumb. And I would just like to make the point that there are a lot of dumb 16-year-olds, and a lot of those dumb 16-year-olds don't get into Harvard.
Right.
And, you know, the way it works out.
Right. You're not guaranteed. Like, yeah, that's the thing, is that you're not guaranteed a spot in Harvard. And had this guy put it on his application, hey, I said this stuff, he probably would have been rejected. My feeling is this. I frankly, if I thought this letter that he wrote them was better, I as an admissions person at Harvard, could see myself making the decision to let him in. Because because look, I mean, this is all subjective stuff, right? Where you admit a student, and frankly, you know, like the fact that the words "I'm sorry" aren't written in that letter lead me to believe that this is not the guy. This guy does not have the emotional maturity or awareness of the implications of this thing in such a way. I mean, so I don't think this should automatically disqualify him, but I don't think that his I don't know if I would call it apology. His quick note on callous comments. The thing is, these are not callous comments. Callous comments are like, I don't care that kid fell down the stairs. He was a jerk. And I'm glad the guy is in a wheelchair. That's a callous comment. These comments are racist comments that were used, you know, maybe they were trying to be offensive, but the letter that the quick note that he sent apparently to Harvard, I don't know if he sent it to who he sent it to, but I imagine he sent it to Harvard, is not sufficient. And it's really basically based on that I would rescind the guy's application, because more information. I mean, look, here's the bottom line. You could get into Harvard, and if you skip the second half of your school year, they can say, you know what, you failed out. We're not going to let you in now. Or, hey, we found out that your essay was not accurate, or whatever it is. It's within their purview to do this. And I just think that his apology, to the extent that he even make an apology, I don't even know if he would characterize it.
It was not a contribution to public fora.
He didn't even characterize it as an apology. No. On Twitter, he said, here's a quick note.
I really like the distinction, though. I agree with you 100% because I don't want us to be like the no redemption scolds. So I'm always interested in what the second play is. Like, it's not like, oh, well, that thing happened and that's it. I don't want to have that position, but I agree with you. It's in what he wrote today, and it clearly was not. I don't buy it. If I buy it, it would be a different position. I agree with you completely.
I think he's being perfectly honest, but I think that, frankly, he doesn't get it.
Well, sure. Whatever way you
Yeah.
want to say it. I just think that's a very valuable distinction to make, like in the whatever the second act is, and I don't think he gets it. I don't think, whatever way we want to frame it.
The
Appreciate the
minimum
call.
program that I would like to see there would be for him to acknowledge that his comments were racist.
Right. And he does.
Well, that's
he
the
does,
starting point
yeah.
of any actual genuine response to this is, wow, that was obscenely racist.
Here is the kid went on to Fox News, apparently expecting a bit of a softball from host Ed Henry, and apparently Ed Henry was deciding that I might not be going to the company picnic this year. Here it is.
Harvard, for people who don't know, Harvard was founded in 1636 by slave owners. It has a long history of racism, sexism, misogyny. But I think that people can grow and people can change.
Right.
And I don't hold that standard to Harvard. And I think that people can make mistakes. And I don't think that mistakes make you irredeemable, as Harvard showed for me, as
Fair
Harvard
point.
established for me.
Can I give you a time out there? So you're
Sure.
mentioning that they had slave owners in the 1600s.
Mm-hmm.
You using the N-word was what? A year and a half ago? Do you
2
see
years
it?
ago.
2 years ago. A little more recent.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I mean, I think his point is okay. But again, when I read his quick note, he doesn't call them. He didn't say that Harvard was callous back in the day. They had slave owners. No, he called them racist, and they were. We had a racist society. Like, not to say that we don't now, but one that was far more, at least institutional, and a lot more full-throated. And he doesn't refer to his comments as racist in that note. And I think you get 1 second swing at the ball there, and you missed. So, what is it? What is it that Tom Cruise says at the end of what's that damn movie? No, gosh, Risky Business.
I thought that was Jack Nicholson.
Illinois State. I think that's what he basically said. Well, all right.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Grandpa just had his fun
Yeah,
time.
fuck it.
Yeah,
Looks like Illinois State.
Can't believe talking about Risky Business.
I have seen that movie.
It reminded me of
remember
the scene
anything
in
from it.
Risky Business.
Never you guys seen Risky Business?
And Tom
I have
Cruise
seen
was
it.
there.
Okay. You don't remember when he said Illinois State?
I guess it didn't make a huge impression on me.
When the guy shows up at the house who's going to like give him the admissions interview to wherever it was, to some Ivy League school, and it looks like it's not working and he doesn't care. He's in the middle of the party and it's sort of like, all right.
Maybe I'll have to rewatch it.
Calling from a 504 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Did you see Risky Business?
No, I am not as old as you, Sam. I did not see Risky Business.
Click. Goodbye.
I am Robert in New Orleans.
Eesh. All right.
Well, that was a good 90 minutes I was on hold for that. Great.
In fact,
Could have watched
I'll get to
Risky
it 'cause I know you
Business.
guys-
while
I
you're
think
on
you'll find
hold,
it was
dude.
closer to 72 minutes, but go ahead.
I know you got to be getting short. I know how you always complain when people call in and disagree with you about your practice or whatnot, but we're not those people. I'm not those people, and we always tell them, why don't you do your own thing? We actually started a radio show and socialist podcast.
Oh.
I want to give a shout out to Jamie for retweeting us on a tweet here in New Orleans. There's a bunch of DSA members, and we do our thing. I actually do have a real question. It's not just a shameless
What's
plug.
the name of your podcast?
It is Good Morning Comrade. We do
That's a
2
good
shows
title.
a week, and we go live on Tuesday mornings on a radio show, radio station that Ring of Fire is actually syndicated on.
Sweet.
So we've been around for less than a month, and we're already caught up with you.
Well, you think about that, you son of a bitch.
Well,
Yeah, maybe you ought to sit down and think about that next time you watch Risky Business on fucking
excuse
VHR.
me, Rob.
Yeah.
Good
Well, that's
morning,
right, though,
comrade, to you.
But Mike, this is on you too, though, Michael Brooks, because you're like a concierge for Sam, right? 10 years ago, could we have gotten him like this? With all due respect, Sam is slipping.
Wow.
Wow.
Jesus. Rob, I got news
Cedar
for you.
is slipping. Sam is going, instead of a fruit,
Let me just
instead
tell
of
you
fruit,
this,
he's going
Rob.
to get yogurt for himself.
Rob, I want you to look at your computer if you have one. When you come for
I
the
do.
king,
You're on it
you
right
best not miss, buddy.
But they just got us.
Here's my real questions, though. I do actually have a question. It's two questions, and I'll let you go because you got to be getting short.
Yeah.
One, DNC and RNC are coming up. How do we get on Radio Row? Because I was Googling and I can't find like what they want for.
Oh,
what do they
really?
want for credentials?
I'm sorry. Are you asking how you get on Radio Row?
Yes, Dad, I am. Yes, Papa.
You know, I don't know yet. You got to mail it in. You got to. I mean, I if I remember what we did last time, I just went on their website, but it was late. I mean, it was not 6 months out. I don't think to get credentialed. I think it was a little bit. So I mean, what I would do, were I you, is figure out where you're going to stay. I don't know where the RNC is. In fact, I don't know how the RNC works. I know how the DNC works, and that was I remember I submitted something online. Find out where the RNC is. The DNC is going to be in Milwaukee, and the first thing I would do now is reserve. If you're going to Airbnb, if you're going to stay with friends, whatever it is, lock that in now, because you can always cancel that. And go for the credentials. If I have any other information, I will let you know. Tweet at me and just remind me. But I don't know. I don't know how they give out credentials. I don't know what their baseline is going to be. The idea that it's like 4 years ago, I would go with Ring of Fire, because radio is what gets you credentialed. But I would imagine now podcasts are also going to be credentialed. I just don't think they're going to have every podcast. Do you know what I mean? But radio is...
Yeah, you read my mind, though, because that's what I thought, because we're actually on a legit radio station, so I'm like, we could use that.
I'll be honest with you, that I have contemplated, we have contemplated taking Ring of Fire off of terrestrial radio. And basically we decided, let's postpone this contemplation until after the conventions, or to after the election, because for that very reason.
Gotcha. Second part, real quick. Speaking of conventions,
and Rob, I'll tell you something. If I see you on Radio Row,
hear me out.
Let me just tell you this.
Convention's coming up in Austin.
I
know that you want to go.
What is coming up in Austin?
Go.
The Libertarian Convention.
Oh, I do want to go, but I don't want to go. When is it?
Oh, you do? I was going to say, let us jump on that grenade for you, Daddy Cedar. We'll be more than happy to go out there.
Well,
he really is like Sollozzo, you know that? But you're doing Sollozzo in reverse order, because Sollozzo waited to hit the Don after the deal fell through. First, you're bragging about hitting the operation, and now you have a favor and a deal proposal.
Yeah. I got news for you, Chief.
That's so true.
When you're sitting on Radio Row, if you get on there, watch out for that ISDN line, because those things come loose.
All right.
If you know what I mean. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Bye.
Like the horse's head scene.
Problems happen. Things happen sometimes when you're on Radio Row. You think you have an internet connection, and then all of a sudden, wait, who cut this Ethernet cord? Calling from a 478. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Have you seen Risky Business?
Yeah, Sam, I have seen Risky Business. It's been quite a long time. I do like to see where he runs about in his underwear. That's something I personally Do enjoy. This is Jeff from Georgia.
Jeff from Georgia. How are you, sir?
Hey, man, I'm doing great because right up top, I got to let you about your listeners know something serious. I beat it. To the extent I've been any sort of interesting or funny individual, it's all thanks to my better half, my wife, whose birthday is today. I'm sure I'm happy that she was born. It's pretty awesome. I'm really glad she exists and loves me. I love her too. So happy birthday, Jane. Yeah.
Jeff from Georgia's
hey, thank you, Sam.
better half.
No, this was not counted as your birthday present, sweetheart. I promise. Real quick, because we were talking about immigration earlier. You know, there's something been sticking in my craw because, you know, every time we talk about immigration or deportation issues, it seems like, you know, always this question comes up, well, what do you want to do? You're still a damn leftist, right? But you want to throw open them borders? What, you know, what would an immigration situation, we just going to let everybody come over naturalized? You know, foolish, so foolish. And kind of what I tried to do to approach this issue is just look at the history, broadly speaking, of how immigration laws changed post-Civil War at a federal level for about 100 years. And when you do that, and you sit down with esteemed attorney Stephen Robbins, also known as Ronald Reagan, you'll discover that there are a lot of mechanisms very obvious, right, what's happening, where like the supply of immigrant labor is just not sufficient to make our society function. People talk a lot about like how our economy can't get by without this labor, and I fucking hate that, even though that's kind of true, I guess. What it really is, though, is that like the world that we live in, the world that we exist in now, has these people in it. You know, the system that we've designed is very obviously not designed to work properly at all. There is so much low-hanging fruit that you can fix that even somebody who's not a lawyer can understand about fixing some of our immigration. Like there's something called a 3 to 10 year bar, right? Where if you've been living undocumented in the United States for 6 months or less, you got to leave for 3 years. If it's more than 6 months, you got to leave for 10 years before you could basically seek any kind of relief, more or less. It's more complicated than that, but and that's just one example. I really get sick of people who just, you know, constantly want to pretend as though this issue isn't like all the other ones. You know, Medicare for all is also kind of an incrementalist thing. You know, when you say, you know, from a leftist point of view, I'd rather see something like an NHS, right? But we can't even get to that yet. You start with the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is the National Health Insurance Program, right? And same with immigration. So I just wanted to make that point real quick because it's something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. I got to edit that podcast down. So it does not exist.
Well, I appreciate the call, Jeff, and I think you're right. I mean, there hasn't been, I don't think there's been really a leader on the center left who has articulated a particularly specific immigration plan, or even like the broad concept of a plan. It's usually like, you know, it's usually very piecemeal, it seems to me, and a certain amount of like pre-compromised and pre-digested. And I think, look, one of the things in that book Identity Crisis became clear is that a lot of issues have got caught up in the polarization of the era. And fortunately, people on the center left have moved left on the immigration issue than they had, you know, even 5-10 years ago, even, you know, 4 years ago. And I think that's good. I think we're going to see something soon. I mean, I think if we get a Democrat elected, if it's like a Warren or a Sanders, or I would imagine even like a Booker or a Harris, we're going to hear a sort of very specific moving in the right direction, for lack of a better term, immigration policy articulated.
I just want to add, and Reagan is my lead on this, I just think that that's why it's so important to really deploy the rhetoric of demilitarization instead of getting sidetracked on this open borders thing, which I agree it's a beautiful horizon goal, but I think in terms of actual translation, in terms of like actual policy and really stopping and getting specific, because even abolish ICE, we need to be super specific. I don't want a renamed ICE essentially doing the same thing. Demilitarization and having a norms conforming process, which would mean basically countries, including us, living up to our obligations under refugee treaties and other protocols, would be a way of making it very specific and very humane.
You also don't want to just have state and local officers doing that kind of work, which has happened in this country in the past. In the 30s, during an event called the Great Repatriation, we sent back millions of people to Mexico. 60% of them were actually United States citizens based on nothing but their race. And it was the State Department who was on board with it, but a lot of the grunt work was done by sheriffs and state patrols and things like this. This was, I'm also on board with abolishing ICE, but there is going to be a little bit more to it than that. All right, I've talked all long enough. Y'all have a good one, Story Report.
Thames Darwin says that the New Orleans caller is gonna go into Matt's DMs and say Michael was hot for my idea, wasn't he? On the Godfather tip, that was funny.
Calling from a 914 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You very well may be the last caller of the day.
Hello, Sam. It's me, Grimlock in Putnam County.
Grimlock in Putnam County. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. A couple things.
Putnam County, New York, I assume.
First of all, yeah. Up in the excerpts. First of all, someone needs to tell Sebastian Gorka that he's really late for Operation Paperclip.
Late for Operation Paperclip, okay.
That's when we brought in all those Nazi scientists at the end of the war.
Right. No, I know.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
This is very ungenerous
So,
Yeah, look, it wasn't a great joke, but it was a good effort.
Yes. Good stuff.
I tried.
Good stuff.
That's fine.
Also, just something I think was sort of lost on the conspiracy theory thing was that George Bush was the one who said and inaugurated the New World Order.
Right.
So there's a fundamental disconnect in responsibility there, I guess.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, that the right says that the left is the ones creating the New World Order, but the New World Order was the hegemony of American power.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I think, taking, conservative critique and saying they're being hypocritical, this just doesn't interest me.
Oh, I know. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Anyway.
I mean, in a subtle way.
I don't know that it's funny.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
know it's not funny, ha ha.
It's not funny,
but
ha,
I mean,
ha.
it's funny.
Brings a twinkle to your eye.
Yes,
you haven't heard a
it's
joke
amusing.
in a couple of years.
It's amusing. It's more of like a 1:35 p.m. amusing thing rather than like a 2:30 amusing thing.
Gotcha.
But you've been on hold for a long
Anyway.
time. That's why it's so.
Hey, I would, but keep going. No
What
rush.
else you got? One more.
Keep talking.
So the real meat of what I wanted to get at is that between the drumbeat of war with Iran and now fully starting up the final solution and turning ICE into the Einsatzgruppen, it seems like we have these events that could lead to what just happened this weekend in Brazil, where we had millions of people on general strike because they're
That would be good. We could only hope to have millions of people on general strike. Solidarity with Brazil.
But the question,
but the
question to me is, I mean,
it would be kind of
there's
funny
a
if
lot-
we did that. Yes. Sorry.
I mean, just the actual thinking through how that would actually transpire for a long period of time. Part of that would require sort of Freegan efforts of getting, recently expired food and keeping people, alive. Because it's hard to have a standing
Is this
army
a prank phone call?
if they're not well fed.
Is this a prank call?
But
is this a prank call? Because I really hope so.
not a prank call.
Oh, shit.
But how do we really get people to feel comfortable with going into neighboring businesses and telling people, no, we're not working anymore. We're taking the time off.
Hey, Sam, I'm not going to be in
look,
here tomorrow. Just to let you know. You guys, do you feel comfortable now?
I think I don't think people are going to be.
But having the courage to do that.
Well, I think what it honestly, I'm going to give you the short answer is, you see other people doing it, and it suddenly becomes within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
That's the way these things start, and so. It doesn't have to be everybody at 9 a.m. walks in and tells their boss, like, look, I'm going to tell you, like, I'm not coming into work today. Sorry about the food.
It would be kind of funny, though.
But more than likely, something like that happens is you see small actions, you see somebody do it, and then from there, you take that inspiration.
Wait. Do you have anything else you'd like to share? You got anything else?
I got to
No,
go.
he's got something else. Come on,
go.
let him.
Gotta go. But
No,
Grimlock,
just,
you got anything else?
Viva Antifa. Listen to the Antifada in Swampside chats.
there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else?
Appreciate
I like
the call.
this guy.
You want to plug?
All right, stop. All right, Grimlock, thank you for the call, though. I mean, I think
Thank you, Sam.
the way this is going to happen, is the way every other sort of general strike. I think in this country, you're going to have some type of like large wildcat strike that is not going to be as comprehensive as the strike that will follow a week later. That's the way that something like that happens. More or less. All right, folks, that's it for phone calls of the day.
Now, Sam. The tactics.
And we're going to do
Turning
10
things
IMs.
over in the swamp.
Dater of bad Jews. Kind of sad that the least believable aspect of all the all-encompassing QAnon conspiracy theory is that Trump is secretly competent. Foreign agent. On the subject of conspiracy theories, has Michael done any reading about the 1986 assassination of Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme? And if so, have you formed any opinion of what really happened? It's still an open case, and investigation has pursued thousands of tips and leads.
So we actually are thinking about doing an illicit history on that, which is interesting timing. I think probably it had to do. I'm probably Afrikaner intelligence services because of his connections to the ANC and being really militant against apartheid. But there's a lot to unravel there.
Sebi G, new product idea: Jimmy Dore's Lava Gelato. Kentucky Fried Comrade, great interview today. Was reminded during the interview about some stuff that Chapo has said about the need for the left to resuscitate a common class enemy in capital when trying to build a broader political coalition. Winnipeg Craig, Sam, you botched the pronunciation of the NDP leader's name yesterday. It's pronounced Jagmeet Singh.
Jagmeet Singh, bro.
He's just proposed a Canadian wealth tax like Warren's, an increase in corporate tax rates, marginal tax rates, increases to capital gains. This would go towards massive expansion of healthcare coverage, Canadian Green New Deal, 50,000 in non-market housing units per year, a basic income pilot, $1 billion towards childcare, and pushing for free transit and post-secondary education. They're calling it a new deal, the new deal for people. You should really dive into the plan. It's a game changer. It looks pretty good.
I think he's
but it
interesting.
is not a bug, but rather a feature. When I mispronounce anyone's name. Adam Yames. Big fan of the show, but my favorite segments are the Dennis Miller segments. I like how he manages to kill the buzz of everyone who invites him on their show. My question is, where is the Kindler Miller content we all desperately need in this divisive time? Secret identity politics. I was thumbing through my Bible last night, and all the verses about caring for the poor and hungry had an annotation at the bottom of the page with a URL linking me to Dave Rubin interviewing Andrew Yang. Weird. Also, a shout out to Hassan Piker, who absolutely bullied Larry Elder in a joint interview recently. He was cynical and slick and was very satisfying.
Yeah, Hassan texted me that interview, and he was like, "I think you'll enjoy this." And I watched it.
I would like to see it.
Bully is the only word. It's pretty beautiful.
Larry
That's our
Elder
man.
sat
Very
down
well
with
done by
Janine and
Hassan.
I off air and had some comment when we first met him where he was like, leave it on the on the field. And I was like, what do you mean leave it on the field? And then I realized, I'm like, wait, is this a game for you? Like, this was in the, in the wake of the Iraq War. They were killing 100, are you serious? I was just shocked.
How dare you, sir?
Nick from Minnesota, can you comment on a recent story from the Washington Examiner saying AOC has a low approval rating in her own district? I would be very surprised if someone has paid for an actual study of that, to be honest with you, at this point. Who is it that is expending that kind of money? I don't know. But it's conceivable, I guess, but I don't know. I'd be very surprised. Legends of Han, do you think Rogan is intimidated by your important high-level ideas? You need to be invited on because you speak his regional language. Pacman didn't seem like he had a chance of penetrating Rogan's logic bubble. I've gotten word to Joe that I am amenable to coming on. I don't know that he's interested. Dirty 530. After a long Father's Day chat, I'm to understand my dad wants all bicycle owners of all ages to register and pay taxes the same as cars do. His words, paraphrased and sanitized by me, even if they own cars and pay taxes on roads, that way they are not paying taxes when they're on their bikes. I countered with 800 military. I mean, I don't know if that's a bad idea if you want to make it if you actually want to do the cost benefit analysis. I mean, if you want to do it really prorate it, I'd be okay with that. It would probably be, I don't know.
I'm going to have to do
$15 a year
kids are being murdered in Yemen answer on that one.
The Chris Lapaco, how much do you think people should worry about Donald Trump coming around millions of immigrants next week? Do you think he's just full of crap, or is it about to get real? I think there's going to be thousands. I think we've seen something like this before, and this is, for public consumption. But I think it's
terrorism.
Bad. It's bad.
All serious. It's all terrorism.
From last week's game, Attorney Eric Swalwell actually said, we don't need a crime bill. We need a hope bill. Here's some more. One of these is real. As president, I'm going to give you a tax cuts, not weird haircuts. I consider us Democrats to be part of the Avengers. The Republicans in 2016, that was the Hunger Games. I'll be raising wages at McDonald's, not eating Filet-O-Fishes at McDonald's. Bernie's all about revolution, but I just want evolution, to evolve past our differences. How willing am I to work with the Republicans? Yang. Let's just say I won't just reach across the aisle. I'll reach around the aisle. Oof. Don't know. Normal constraints. Sam, I think gun control is a losing issue for leftists and an impediment to building rural support for leftist movements. I'm also hesitant to give up my firearms in this time of resurgent white supremacy and fascism. However, the idea of taking away handguns from red-faced suburban boomers will always make me smile. Farut Milky Way caught the show yesterday.
Best take on guns I've ever heard.
Caught the show yesterday. I have a family member on SSDI. They receive about $1,300 a month in addition to being enrolled in early Medicare. Seems to be a significantly better benefit than Yang's proposal. Also, the Social Security disability insurance approval process takes years. Yang's people would say, well, you get the choice. But the problem is that once people get the choice, the payroll taxes that go to Social Security, if this becomes less of a universal program and a universal benefit, the funding sources, politically, this undercuts it. Now, Yang himself made this point with Dave Rubin. After a while, slowly the programs have less people in them, and then it becomes politically easier to end them. And then all you have is one benefit that goes to everybody, and somebody says, hey, why should a wealthy person have this benefit? They shouldn't. So let's means test it. And then all of a sudden, you've been able to drop the money down and you've destroyed the social safety net. And so this is not a new critique that I have come up with based on the existence of Yang. This is a critique that we were talking about years ago about the UBI, to the extent that this was.
We had about UBI were well before, and it just so happens that Yang just conforms in every way, shape, and form to all of the worst versions of it.
Saw it coming a mile away.
Right.
World gone wrong. Isn't Trish Regan the terrorist fist jab lady? She may have been. And the final I am of the day. Gigi Palin. Hey, Sam, I was browsing through the history of Ottoman Empire the other day, looking for trends of anti-Semitic sentiment throughout Europe and the Middle East, and I found some reference to Jews being blamed for the spread of the plague in the Middle Ages, among others. Maybe this is already given credence by historians as racist rhetoric of the time, but it sounds like an attempt at historically based conspiracy referencing Jewish migration throughout the world since biblical times. Considering the religious dominance throughout everyday life, the geographical transience of Judaism seems to have been used as a cudgel by Christians and Muslims who clung to the central power structure of the religious nation states to form cultural identities. It's just crazy to see these already the baseless criticisms continue to morph and change through the modern day into people blindly hating George Soros, for instance. I will tell you this, that in that, what book was it? The Roots of Racism. The guy had mentioned being able to measure not only what you just referred to, the spread of the plague in the Middle Ages, but where the plague hit the hardest were the most anti-Semitic in the Third Reich.
That's historical materialism for you.
See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my